Control is not a word people like anymore. We live in a world that celebrates expression over restraint, feelings over faith, reaction over reflection. Yet the greatest test of maturity is not how loudly we speak, but how deeply we think before we speak. Not how high our emotions rise, but how steadfast our spirit stands when life storms rage. Many lose battles not because they lack strength, but because they lack self-governance. They are defeated not by enemies outside, but by undisciplined forces within. The secret to stability and success lies in mastering 4 gates of influence: the mouth, the mood, the money, and the mind. Each is a portal through which either wisdom or destruction flows. Your mouth can build or burn bridges, your mood can attract peace or chaos, your money can serve purpose or enslave desire, your mind can house truth or harbor deception. The one who governs these 4 realms does not live as a slave to circumstance, but as a steward of divine order. Tonight we will learn how to bring these powerful domains under control, not through willpower alone, but through wisdom rooted in eternal principles. The mouth is the instrument that reveals the condition of the heart. What you say when no one is watching discloses who you truly are, because the tongue speaks from the overflow of the soul. Words are not empty vibrations, they are carriers of power, seeds that either birth life or summon destruction. Every word is a seed that takes root somewhere, either in the soil of blessing or in the wasteland of regret. This is why discipline of speech is not merely a moral virtue, but a spiritual safeguard. Many have lost relationships, opportunities, and divine favor because they could not bridle their tongue. The mouth, though small, is like the rudder of a great ship. It determines direction. One sentence spoken in anger can destroy years of credibility. One word uttered in haste can close a door that may never reopen. Control of speech begins with control of thought, for the mouth only reveals what the mind has been meditating on. If bitterness fills your thoughts, it will soon fill your speech. If gratitude fills your heart, words of life will follow. Silence, when guided by discernment, can be holier than speech. There are times when holding your tongue is not weakness but wisdom, because restraint keeps you from giving power to foolishness. The wise understand that words, once released, cannot be recalled. They travel, they influence, they build atmospheres, and they shape destinies. The tongue has no bones, yet it can break hearts. It has no muscles of its own, yet it can move nations. The power of life and death is in the tongue, not metaphorically, but spiritually. Every declaration carries creative force. The Creator formed the world through words, and being made in His image, we carry a fragment of that same creative authority. When you speak doubt, you empower defeat. When you speak faith, you authorize victory. The enemy does not fear your emotions, but he trembles when you declare truth with conviction. That is why he constantly seeks to corrupt your speech through complaint, gossip, murmuring, and idle talk. Each careless word weakens your spiritual foundation because it betrays a heart disconnected from divine order. To control your mouth is to control your atmosphere. Environments respond to words. A household can be filled with peace or plagued by strife depending on the language spoken within its walls. Some families have generational patterns of conflict, not because of curses from outside, but because of uncontrolled tongues inside. Words become spiritual agreements. Every negative confession signs a contract with defeat. Every word of faith enacts an agreement with divine authority. When you align your mouth with truth, you align your life with power. There is also a deep spiritual discipline in knowing when to speak and when to be silent. Many lose their influence because they feel compelled to comment on everything. Wisdom often hides itself in silence. When you learn to hold your peace in the midst of provocation, you display spiritual strength that confuses your adversaries. Silence allows discernment to sharpen. It gives time for the Spirit to whisper what words alone could never accomplish. Sometimes the most powerful statement is restraint itself. Controlling your mouth also means speaking intentionally, replacing idle chatter with purposeful communication. Every conversation should aim to edify, enlighten, or encourage. Idle speech drains energy. Intentional words impart grace. The Apostle once said, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but only that which builds others up." This is more than etiquette, it's warfare. When you bless, you break the cycle of cursing. When you encourage, you overthrow despair. When you declare truth, you disarm deception. Your words are not neutral, they are instruments of either bondage or liberation. Consider how many divine moments have been aborted because someone spoke unbelief at the threshold of breakthrough. Faith is fragile at the moment of formation. It must be protected by speech that agrees with the promises of God. When you speak faith consistently, you build an atmosphere where miracles can manifest. Control of your mouth is not just moral discipline, it is spiritual architecture. You are building the environment where your future will dwell. Even in prayer, the principle applies. Heaven does not respond to emotional noise. It responds to spiritual alignment. The language of prayer must be governed by faith and reverence. To control your mouth is to train it for truth, to make it an instrument of intercession rather than irritation, a vessel of prophecy rather than complaint. The mature believer learns that every word is a seed, every sentence a strategy, every statement a signal. When your mouth comes under divine discipline, your life follows. Destiny bends toward those who speak with purpose. Control your mouth, and you will find your relationship strengthened, your mind clearer, and your faith unshakable. The tongue can be a fire that consumes or a flame that warms. Choose to let your words become instruments of life, and watch how the atmosphere around you begins to mirror the order within you. Mood is the weather of the soul, and those who cannot master their moods live under emotional storms that block the light of wisdom. Emotions are not evil, they are indicators, not dictators. They reveal the condition of the heart, but they should never be permitted to rule it. The tragedy of our time is that people follow feelings as if they were facts. They make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. They walk away from divine assignments because a passing mood whispered louder than divine instruction. To control your mood is to refuse to be enslaved by the fluctuations of the flesh. It is to understand that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the mastery of spirit in the midst of it. Every mood carries energy. Anger ignites, fear paralyzes, joy strengthens, and sorrow drains. When your emotions are left unguarded, the enemy uses them as open gates. He cannot read your thoughts, but he can provoke reactions. A careless mood can undo years of preparation. Many people do not lose because they lack intelligence, but because they lose control of their emotional responses. They react when they should reflect. They explode when they should endure, and they retreat when they should stand. Maturity is not seen in how high you rise in moments of victory, but in how steady you remain in moments of pressure. The heart without restraint becomes a breeding ground for confusion. Emotional instability blinds discernment. You cannot hear divine guidance clearly when your soul is storming. Emotions are loud. They drown out the still, small voice that gives direction. The wise do not deny their feelings, but they do not worship them either. They acknowledge their emotions, bring them before the throne, and subject them to truth. When you learn to master your mood, you become dangerous to the adversary because you no longer react to provocation. You respond through wisdom. Emotional control is spiritual warfare. The enemy seeks to disturb your peace because peace is the platform where revelation stands. The moment you lose peace, confusion enters. That is why he sends agitation, frustration, and irritation in subtle forms. Sometimes it comes through people, sometimes through unexpected events, sometimes through internal anxieties. The goal is always the same, to make you lose focus. But when you guard your mood, you maintain your authority. Peace is your weapon. Composure is your shield. There is divine power in remaining calm under pressure. A calm spirit carries clarity. When others panic, the one who controls his mood becomes the vessel God can use. History shows that battles are often won by those who stayed steady when others lost their nerve. The same is true in the battles of life. Every challenge is testing not only your faith, but your composure. Can you stand still and see the salvation of the Lord when chaos surrounds you? The one who can maintain peace in crisis is the one who has mastered self. Emotions are like fire, useful when contained, destructive when uncontrolled. Passion without principle becomes poison. Anger without aim becomes abuse. Sadness without surrender becomes depression. But when emotion is harnessed by wisdom, it becomes strength. Anger, when submitted to truth, becomes righteous zeal. Sorrow, when surrendered, becomes compassion. Joy, when grounded in gratitude, becomes endurance. Control does not mean suppression, it means submission. It is not about denying what you feel, but aligning what you feel under divine governance. To control your mood, you must guard your atmosphere, the people you associate with, the content you consume, the conversations you entertain. All of these influence your emotional state. You cannot maintain peace while feeding on chaos. Protect your emotional environment as fiercely as you protect your time. Spend time with those who speak peace, read what builds faith, and separate yourself from what drains your spirit. Mood management is environment management. You must also renew your mind daily. Moods shift because thoughts shift. When your thoughts are anchored in truth, your emotions stabilize. Gratitude is one of the strongest anchors for emotional control. A grateful heart is harder to offend. When you focus on what is right instead of what is wrong, your emotions come into alignment with peace. That is why Scripture instructs us to think on whatever is pure, lovely, and of good report. It is not poetic advice, it is psychological warfare. There will always be days when your emotions rebel against reason, when the weight of life tries to dictate your responses. In those moments, remember that your mood is not your master. You can choose calmness, you can choose peace. The Spirit gives the fruit of self-control, but it must be exercised through choice. Every time you choose patience over anger, peace over panic, gratitude over complaint, you are training your soul to submit to divine order. When you control your mood, you reclaim dominion. You cease being a puppet of circumstance and become a steward of your spirit. The storms outside may rage, but within you remains a sanctuary of stillness. That inner peace becomes your compass. The person who rules their mood rules their life, because they no longer live by reaction, but by revelation. Control your mood, and you will find that peace is not a place you visit. It becomes the atmosphere you carry wherever you go. Money is not just currency, it is a mirror reflecting the state of your inner world. The way you handle money reveals what you truly value, what you trust, and what governs your decisions. Many think money is a financial issue, but it is primarily a spiritual one. It tests discipline, exposes priorities, and measures stewardship. You can tell much about a person's character not by their words or worship, but by how they manage resources. Money reveals the maturity of the heart, whether it is ruled by greed or guided by gratitude, driven by fear or directed by faith. To control your money is not to hoard it, but to bring it under divine order, to let purpose guide possession and wisdom govern wealth. Most people do not realize that financial disorder often mirrors emotional or spiritual disorder. Impulsiveness with money comes from impulsiveness within the soul. Overspending is often a substitute for inner emptiness, an attempt to buy comfort that can only come from peace. When your inner life lacks structure, your outer life leaks resources. The lack of control over money is rarely about mathematics. It is about meaning. Where there is no vision, there is financial waste. But when your heart is anchored in purpose, your spending and saving both become sacred acts of stewardship. Money itself is not evil, it is neutral, a servant that amplifies whatever spirit rules the person who holds it. In the hands of a wise steward, it builds, blesses, and multiplies good. In the hands of the foolish, it destroys. When you fail to control your money begins to control you. Debt becomes bondage, and desire becomes a tyrant. The one who cannot tell their money where to go will eventually find it telling them where they cannot. True financial freedom begins not with abundance, but with accountability. It is not about how much you earn, but how faithfully you manage what you have. There is a spiritual principle at work. Whatever you refuse to control, you lose authority over. When you manage money according to divine wisdom, you are not serving money, you are mastering it. But when you chase money as your master, you enter servitude disguised as success. Many chase prosperity but neglect principle, and in doing so, they forfeit peace. Money without wisdom is noise without harmony. It moves fast, but leaves emptiness in its wake. Prosperity without purpose is like a river with no boundaries. It floods and destroys. Prosperity with discipline, however, irrigates life and nourishes generations. Generosity is one of the surest proofs of mastery over money. The generous heart understands that giving does not reduce wealth, it redeems it. When you give with divine alignment, you declare that money is your servant, not your God. Stinginess, on the other hand, reveals fear. It shows a soul still bound by the illusion of scarcity. To control your money is to operate from abundance even before abundance arrives. It is to give not out of surplus, but out of faith. Every time you release resources in alignment with purpose, you invite divine multiplication. But giving without discipline is as unwise as hoarding without purpose. True stewardship balances generosity with strategy, wise planning that reflects gratitude, not greed. Financial control also requires self-restraint in desires. The culture around you constantly whispers, "You need more." But contentment is wealth that cannot be stolen. When you learn to live within your means, you are declaring independence from the spirit of consumerism. You are saying, "My value is not in my possessions, it is in my purpose." Many destroy their future chasing appearances. They trade long-term stability for short-term satisfaction. But every purchase should answer a question. Does this align with my mission? If it doesn't, then it is not progress. It is distraction. Control of money also includes preparation for the unseen. Wisdom saves for tomorrow without fear of tomorrow. It plans, invests, and allocates not out of anxiety, but out of foresight. Godly stewardship is not careless spending or careless saving. It is calculated obedience. The disciplined soul does not live by impulse, but by instruction. Every dollar has an assignment, every resource a purpose. When you live that way, you find that money begins to flow toward purpose instead of chaos. The way you handle money determines how much you can be trusted with greater things. Scripture reminds us that if we are not faithful with unrighteous mammon, how can we be trusted with true riches? That means financial stewardship is a rehearsal for spiritual promotion. God will not increase what you mismanage. Control is not punishment, it is preparation for increase. Every budget is a training ground for destiny. Every act of restraint is a seed for responsibility. When you learn to honor money without idolizing it, to spend wisely, give freely, and save diligently, you align yourself with divine order. In the end, the goal is not wealth for its own sake, but wealth with wisdom, prosperity with peace. The one who controls their money does not worship it, but wields it. They use it to build, to bless, to break cycles of poverty in their own life and in the lives of others. They see money not as a master, but as a messenger, a tool to manifest purpose and reflect order. Control your money, and you will discover that true riches are not measured in what you keep, but in what you are free to give without fear. The mind is the first battlefield of every victory and defeat. Before a man fails in life, he has already failed in thought. Every action, every word, every emotion begins as a thought, and if you can govern your mind, you can govern your life. The greatest wars are not fought with weapons, but with ideas. The enemy does not always attack with visible threats. He plants suggestions, doubts, imaginations, and fears. Whoever controls your mind controls your future. That is why renewing the mind is not a one-time event, but a daily discipline. The unguarded mind becomes a playground for confusion, but the disciplined mind becomes a fortress of peace. The mind was created to be the channel of divine thought, a vessel through which revelation flows into reality. Yet when left undisciplined, it turns inward and becomes a breeding ground for anxiety and deception. Many people are not tormented by demons outside of them, but by thoughts within them. They replay failures, magnify fears, and entertain imaginations that paralyze faith. The battlefield is invisible, but very real. You can attend worship, speak faith-filled words, and still be in bondage if your mind is not brought under divine authority. The war for mental control is not won through positive thinking alone. It is won through truth. Truth is the weapon that dismantles lies, and every lie left unchallenged builds a fortress of deception. A disciplined mind begins with awareness. You must become the gatekeeper of your own thought life. Not every thought deserves entry. Not every imagination deserves your meditation. The mind feeds on what it focuses on. If you focus on fear, you strengthen it. If you meditate on faith, you manifest it. This is why spiritual discipline includes controlling what you read, what you watch, and what you entertain. The mind cannot rise higher than its diet. Garbage in, confusion out, wisdom in, peace out. The direction of your mind determines the direction of your days. Mental control also requires silence. In a world that constantly shouts, quietness becomes a weapon. When your mind is noisy, you cannot hear the still small voice of guidance. Solitude is not emptiness, it is alignment. Many people fear silence because it confronts their inner chaos, yet only in stillness does clarity emerge. When you still the noise of anxiety, you allow truth to speak again. The mind must be trained to serve the spirit, not rule over it. It should be a tool, not a tyrant. When the spirit leads, the mind becomes productive. When the mind leads without the spirit, it becomes destructive. Thoughts are seeds that grow into behavior. If you do not uproot negative thoughts, they become beliefs, and beliefs create patterns. A lie believed long enough feels like truth, and that deception shapes reality. You must confront wrong thinking with right revelation. When fear whispers failure, truth must declare victory. When doubt questions destiny, truth must affirm identity. Control of the mind is not the suppression of thought, but the substitution of thought, replacing lies with truth, replacing panic with peace, replacing confusion with clarity. The undisciplined mind will always drift toward worry, but the anchored mind stays in peace. Worry is imagination used against yourself. it is faith in the wrong direction. When you worry, you meditate on what could go wrong instead of what God said will go right. To control your mind is to redirect your meditation. It is to fix your thoughts on what is eternal rather than what is temporary. What you magnify mentally will manifest eventually. There is also a deep connection between mind and emotion. The way you think determines the way you feel. Many emotional storms are simply the fruit of ungoverned thoughts. Change your focus, and your feelings will follow. The mature learn to pause between thought and reaction to ask, is this true? Is this useful? Does this align with purpose? This pause is the doorway to wisdom. Every mental reaction you restrain adds strength to your inner life. The mind must be continually renewed with truth because the world constantly feeds it deception. Media, culture, and fear-based systems attempt to reprogram your focus toward distraction. If you do not fill your mind with truth, the world will fill it with noise. Guard your focus as if your destiny depends on it, because it does. Your life will always move in the direction of your most dominant thoughts. If you think small, you will live small. If you think in alignment with divine purpose, you will walk in divine authority. Control of the mind is the foundation of all other forms of control. You cannot control your mouth, mood, or money if your mind is undisciplined. Every breakthrough begins as a shift in thinking. When the mind is renewed, perception changes, and when perception changes, behavior follows. To think differently is to live differently. The disciplined mind becomes the command center of destiny. The ultimate goal is not merely to think positively, but to think truthfully, to think in harmony with divine order. When your thoughts align with truth, peace becomes your default state. The storms may rage around you, but your inner life remains anchored. The controlled mind is not a mind devoid of thought, but one filled with light, discernment, and clarity. It does not react. It governs. It does not wander. It focuses. It does not conform. It transforms. The one who controls their mind controls their world, because every world is built first in thought before it becomes reality. Control is not suppression. It is alignment. It is not about silencing desire, but about directing it. Everything created by God operates under order, and where there is order, there is peace. The stars move in precision, the tides obey their boundaries, the seasons change according to divine timing. Yet, humanity, created to walk in harmony with that same order, often rebels against it. The chaos we see in the world is not the result of lack of power, but lack of alignment. The soul out of order becomes restless, impulsive, and confused. To live without control is to live without rhythm, to move without purpose, to exist in fragments rather than fullness. Alignment with divine order is not bondage. It is freedom to function as you were designed. When you bring your mouth, mood, money, and mind into alignment with divine truth, you are not restricting yourself, you are restoring harmony. Every part of you begins to operate as it was intended. The mouth stops wounding and starts building. The mood stops reacting and starts reflecting peace. The money stops ruling and starts serving. The mind stops wandering and starts perceiving clearly. Control is not about denying human experience. It is about bringing that experience under divine supervision so that chaos cannot corrupt it. When everything in your life bows to truth, peace follows naturally. True alignment begins with humility. You cannot control what you refuse to submit. Many people seek mastery without surrender, but self-discipline detached from divine order becomes pride disguised as strength. The key to lasting control is understanding authority. When you come under the right authority, you receive the power to exercise authority. The soldier obeys command not because he is weak, but because obedience connects him to power greater than himself. In the same way, when you submit your will to divine order, you gain mastery over the impulses that once ruled you. Surrender is not loss, it is leverage. Alignment is also about rhythm, moving when instructed, waiting when told. Disorder is born from impatience. Many derail their destinies by forcing what God has not yet released. Timing is divine architecture. To move too early is to step outside of protection. To move too late is to miss opportunity. Control teaches you the discipline of waiting without weakening. When your heart is aligned, waiting becomes worship, and patience becomes power. The aligned soul no longer measures progress by motion, but by obedience. It learns that peace is not found in getting ahead, but in staying in sync. To align with divine order, you must first identify what is out of order. Where is there imbalance? What area of life resists submission? Sometimes alignment requires pruning, removing habits, relationships, or thoughts that contradict purpose. Order cannot exist where confusion is tolerated. Every compromise with chaos weakens your authority. The process of alignment is often uncomfortable because it dismantles false comfort. But discipline today prevents destruction tomorrow. When you align your life with divine principles, you do not lose freedom, you reclaim it. Boundaries are not cages, they are protection from self-sabotage. Many confuse control with rigidity, but divine alignment is fluid. It allows movement within structure. Like a river flowing within its banks, life under control moves with strength and direction. Remove the boundaries, and that same river floods and destroys. Structure sustains flow. The same applies to your inner life. When your emotions, thoughts, and actions flow within the structure of truth, creativity, peace, and strength flourish. Control does not quench life, it channels it. Living in divine order means recognizing that everything has a place and a purpose. The tongue is meant to speak truth, not gossip. The mood is meant to express compassion, not chaos. Money is meant to serve purpose, not pride. The mind is meant to discern truth, not dwell in deception. Each area has its divine assignment, and disorder begins when those assignments are violated. You cannot experience peace while living out of place. Alignment restores each element to its rightful role. There is also power in consistency. Alignment is not a one-time act, but a daily practice. Each morning you realign your thoughts, emotions, and decisions with divine truth. Every day you choose discipline over distraction, purpose over impulse. Over time, this rhythm becomes strength. Just as a musician must continually tune his instrument to produce harmony, you must continually tune your life to produce peace. When you live in divine alignment, control becomes effortless because your will and God's will move as one. Decisions become clear, reactions become calm, and your path becomes ordered. You no longer live pulled between extremes but balanced in purpose. The storms may come, but alignment keeps you anchored. Control without alignment leads to frustration, but control born from alignment leads to fulfillment. You are no longer striving to hold everything together. You are resting in the harmony of divine order. In the end, alignment is the foundation of all mastery. Without it, effort becomes chaos. With it, even struggle produces strength. To live in divine order is to move with the rhythm of heaven, to speak what aligns with truth, to feel what aligns with peace, to spend what aligns with purpose, and to think what aligns with wisdom. When every part of your being bows to truth, you step into authority. Control, then, is not suppression of self. It is synchronization with the Creator's design. And when you are aligned with Him, nothing outside of you can overthrow the peace within you. Every part of life is interconnected. Your mouth, mood, money, and mind do not exist in isolation. They influence and reinforce one another in an endless cycle. Disorder in one area will inevitably create instability in the others. A reckless tongue will disturb your peace of mind. A restless mood will lead to impulsive spending. Financial chaos will create emotional stress. Mental confusion will loosen your control of speech. Everything flows together, either in harmony or in conflict. This is the principle of the ripple effect. Each area of discipline strengthens the others, and each area of neglect weakens them. Mastery is holistic. You cannot claim to be disciplined in one area while ignoring the others. True stability is born from integrated control. Imagine a person who speaks carelessly in anger. Their words damage relationships, producing guilt and tension. That tension affects their mood, making them irritable and distracted. Their distracted state clouds their mind, and in that confusion, they make poor financial choices or react emotionally to situations that require clarity. The cycle deepens until life feels chaotic, yet the chaos began with one undisciplined expression. Likewise, when one area comes under control, the blessing ripples outward. A calm mind produces careful words. Careful words preserve peace. Peace sustains focus. Focus leads to wise decisions. Every small act of discipline becomes a seed that multiplies order in every direction. Life rewards those who understand this interconnectedness. You cannot fix one piece without affecting the whole. The person who learns to guard their words will notice their emotions begin to stabilize. The one who manages their finances with integrity will find mental peace returning. The one who disciplines their thoughts will speak with wisdom and spend with restraint. Control is not a list of separate rules, but a single principle expressed through many channels. Bring one part into order, and the others begin to align naturally. The ripple effect of discipline also works in reverse. Neglect invites decay. Laziness with your thoughts will show up in your finances. Neglect of your spiritual life will manifest in your emotions. The physical, emotional, financial, and spiritual realms are not divided. They are threads of the same fabric. When one unravels, the whole garment weakens. That is why you must treat self-control as a system, not a symptom. To master one area while excusing chaos in another is to build on uneven ground. The structure may stand for a while, but eventually imbalance will cause collapse. Small compromises are where disorder begins. The mouth that indulges in gossip eventually learns to justify dishonesty. The emotion that goes unchecked begins to dictate actions. The habit of spending without purpose becomes the pattern of living without discipline. Each choice either reinforces strength or invites weakness. Every day, you are shaping the ecosystem of your soul through the decisions you make in these 4 areas. The wise treat each decision as sacred, understanding that consistency compounds. What you tolerate today becomes the trend of tomorrow. The ripple effect also extends to influence. Your discipline does not affect only you. It affects everyone connected to you. A stable person brings peace to their environment. A reactive person spreads instability. When you control your words, you create safety for others to trust you. When you control your mood, you become an anchor for those tossed by emotional waves. When you manage your money wisely, you set an example of integrity. When you guard your mind, you carry wisdom that others lean on. Discipline radiates outward, shaping atmospheres and altering outcomes far beyond your immediate reach. The key to sustaining this balance is awareness. Constantly examine your life for leaks. If your emotions are unstable, look at your thought patterns. If your finances are chaotic, check your moods and motivations. If your mind feels cluttered, listen to the words you've been speaking. There is always a root feeding the fruit. When one part is off balance, it is a signal, not a sentence. Use imbalance as information, an invitation to realign. You are not called to perfection, but to awareness and adjustment. The power of small corrections cannot be overstated. Just as a ship adjusts its course by degrees to reach its destination, small acts of control create massive results over time. A single moment of restraint can prevent a lifetime of regret. A single decision to save rather than spend can build future stability. A single thought brought under control can silence the voice of fear. Discipline is cumulative. Its rewards are exponential. The consistent practice of small alignments produces an unshakable life. When you begin to operate from internal order, you start to carry external authority. The person who has learned to control their inner world cannot easily be manipulated by the outer world. Words lose their power to wound. Moods lose their ability to destabilize. Money loses its capacity to enslave, and distractions lose their hold on the mind. The ripple effect of discipline becomes the foundation of dominion. In the end, everything you are becoming flows from what you are controlling. The one who masters their mouth, mood, money, and mind does not just live well, they lead well. Their stability becomes a source of strength for others. Their peace becomes contagious. Their integrity becomes legacy. Life was never meant to be fragmented. It was meant to flow in unity. When your inner world operates in harmony, the outer world begins to reflect that same balance. Control one part, and you begin to heal them all. That is the ripple effect of discipline. It starts with one act of mastery and ends in a life of divine order. Control is not a cage. It is the doorway to true freedom. The world teaches that freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, without restraint. But history and experience both prove that unrestrained desire always leads to destruction. The more you indulge impulse, the more you become its slave. Real freedom is not the absence of limits. It is the presence of wisdom. The person who controls their mouth, mood, money, and mind is not restricted. They are released from the tyranny of chaos. They are not living under fear or frustration, but walking in order, confidence, and peace. Control liberates because it restores authority to where it belongs, you. Freedom without discipline is illusion. A river without banks may boast of being free, but it quickly becomes a flood that destroys everything in its path. The banks are what give the river direction and strength. In the same way, discipline gives your life structure so that your energy flows toward purpose instead of spilling into regret. The uncontrolled life may look exciting for a moment, but it always ends in emptiness. The disciplined life, on the other hand, builds momentum. It may appear quiet from the outside, but within that structure, there is power, creativity, and peace. Control is what keeps your potential from scattering. It channels your gifts toward fulfillment. The reward of control is not perfection, but peace. When you learn to rule yourself, you no longer live tormented by your own inconsistencies. You are no longer driven by guilt over what you said, fear over what you feel, or regret over what you spent. You begin to live intentionally instead of reactively. You wake each day knowing your thoughts, words, and actions will serve your destiny, not sabotage it. That inner steadiness becomes a fortress of strength. You no longer depend on external validation to feel secure, because your security comes from the order within. True freedom is when nothing outside of you has the power to pull you off balance. The person who controls their mouth gains the freedom to be trusted. Their words carry weight because they are not careless with them. They can speak with authority because they have mastered silence. The one who controls their mood gains the freedom to choose peace even in chaos. They are no longer dragged by emotion, but guided by discernment. The one who controls their money gains the freedom to give, build, and bless without fear of lack. They own their resources rather than being owned by them. The one who controls their mind gains the freedom to think clearly, to dream boldly, and to perceive truth amidst confusion. Control unlocks peace in every area because it removes confusion from every level. Freedom through control also means you become unshaken by circumstance. Life will always bring pressure, disappointment, and delay, but when your inner world is ordered, the storms outside cannot overthrow the calm within. You may be surrounded by uncertainty, yet remain anchored in confidence. This is what separates those who survive from those who stumble. The undisciplined react to everything, the controlled respond through wisdom. Freedom is found not in avoiding storms, but in learning to stay still within them. Control also creates space for spiritual sensitivity. When your mind is cluttered, your emotions noisy, and your life chaotic, you cannot discern the gentle whisper of divine guidance. But when you bring every area into order, you create stillness, and in that stillness, revelation flows. The disciplined person hears instruction where others hear confusion. Their peace becomes prophetic. They can sense direction, timing, and truth because their internal world is clear. Control sharpens perception. Chaos dulls it. There is also joy in control. The joy of knowing you are no longer a victim of your own habits. The joy of realizing that peace is not dependent on anyone's behavior, but your own decisions. The joy of standing in storms without fear, because your foundation is built on self-mastery. That kind of joy cannot be bought, borrowed, or broken. It is the fruit of discipline, the reward of alignment, the evidence of maturity. Control is not about restriction. It is about rulership. It is about reclaiming the throne of your own soul. When you let truth govern your thoughts, wisdom guard your words, peace direct your emotions, and purpose manage your possessions, you begin to live as you were designed, whole, steady, and free. The undisciplined are slaves to impulse, but the controlled are kings over circumstance. The irony is that what people call freedom, living without control, always leads to bondage, and what people call discipline, living with control, always leads to liberty. The one who governs their inner world cannot be governed by outer forces. Their peace cannot be stolen, their purpose cannot be hijacked, their destiny cannot be derailed. They walk with quiet strength because they have won the first and greatest war, the war within. Control, then, is not merely a tool. It is a testimony that you have chosen mastery over madness, order over chaos, purpose over pleasure. When you control your mouth, mood, money, and mind, you step into the rarest form of power, the power to live free, think clear, and move in divine authority without being ruled by anything but truth.